One of the most important leadership skills today is one that I never even learned during my corporate career. Yet the most effective, impactful, trusted leaders have mastered it. And herein lies the paradox because as a leader, it's expected that you have all the answers. You're often promoted because you're capable. You perform because you solve problems and because you execute. But what if the very thing that made you successful is the thing that's limiting your leadership impact? Today, we're talking about the essential, unspoken leadership skill of the top 1%, curiosity. But not surface level curiosity or polite curiosity. I'm talking about disciplined, intentional, agenda-free curiosity, the kind that requires you to slow down a little bit. It requires you to release control, and the kind that requires you to truly listen. Now, let me share with you the leadership trap that I fell into. Looking back at my time working at JP Morgan Chase for 16 years, I can clearly see that I fell into one of these 3 leadership energy traps. At the time, I really thought I was leading well, but I was actually leading from control. So energy trap number 1 is that overdependence. I created overdependence on me. I trained my people to rely on me for the answers. And I honestly believed I was being helpful, supportive, and I was efficient. But in hindsight, I was disempowering my team. They stopped thinking for themselves, they stopped stretching themselves, and they just waited for direction. So I became the bottleneck. Our momentum slowed, our motivation dropped, and inside, I was feeling increasingly frustrated because they were always waiting. And I just wanted them to be proactive. You see, when you overfunction, your team underfunctions. And that leads us to energy trap number 2, which is being overwhelmed. At the time, I felt like I was pulled in 1,000 different directions, meetings, KPIs, goals, expectations. So I was always rushed. I was unfocused, and I was constantly reacting to what was coming at me. And you see, when you're rushed, people can feel it. My team could feel my urgency, my distraction. They could feel my partial presence, making them feel unseen and unrecognized, often looked over. And I never felt like I could actually see the light at the end of the tunnel. And so then energy trap number 3 comes in, and that's where you begin feeling more and more disconnected. I had drifted from my purpose in leadership. You see, leadership at its core is about helping others access their fullest potential. But I was over here chasing metrics and outcomes, but without any real meaning. I was constantly striving without reflection. I lost the meaning and true purpose of my leadership. And the worst part is my team was modeling what I was modeling: lower energy, lower engagement, and lower ownership. Now, we all want to do work that has impact and meaning, but hustling and striving without purpose and intention slowly just strips away both. So the skill that changed everything, curiosity, that's when the shift happened. And I learned something so simple yet profoundly powerful. Better questions lead to better thinking. Better thinking leads to better leadership, and better leadership leads to greater impact. But better questions only work if you're willing to truly listen and be fully present. Now, we've all heard that before, that we're supposed to be fully present. But being fully present in listening means you don't just hear words. You absorb energy. You observe tone, pauses, body language, what's being said, what's being implied, and oftentimes what's maybe even being avoided. So today I want to rename presence for us. Let's call it listening without attachment. listening without an agenda, listening without meaning making, and listening without preparing your response while the other person is still speaking. Not listening to respond, but listening to understand. Because the one who talks the most actually learns the very least. And here's the truth that we've uncovered through our work with leaders. The longer you lead, the less natural this becomes. Leadership has this way of pulling you towards always talking, telling, and tasking. But impact, true impact in leadership, requires slowing down and just digging a little deeper. And now you're not going to find gold at just asking one question. And rarely you find it at question 2. The gold really lives at question 3 and beyond. Now, in that same vein, it explains why you won't uncover the heart of the issue until you actually ask deeper follow-up questions. Surface answers always protect people, but curiosity invites truth. You know, at our work at the Amplified Life Company, we lean on 7 simple questions, which we've listed for you in the leader guide in the show notes. But today, to make it simple to get started, I want you to remember and start practicing just 2 questions. The first question is this: and what else? And the second question is, what is the real challenge for you here? Because as a reminder, first answers are often rehearsed. But second answers, they'll get you a little closer. And the third answer, that's where honesty lives. So I remember a time back at my Chase days, I was working with 2 colleagues, Danny and Casey, and we were working on this internal training for our banker development in our region. So we built the presentation, we felt really good about it, and we delivered it. Afterwards, we debriefed. We could all kind of sense it. The presentation was good, but it wasn't great. Something was just a little off. So I asked Casey, who was the primary presenter, hey, what do you think that we could have done to move from good to great? And she said right away, the room setup needed to be different. And I agreed. You see, we set up the table as a classroom style in rows, but the content was really built for interaction. So round tables would have supported that way better. And that made sense. But I didn't stop there. I was curious, so I asked, and what else? She paused for a moment and then said, I would have probably gotten rid of most of the presentation. Now, I was actually surprised because Danny and I had worked so hard on the presentation, and then all 3 of us had reviewed it together. But I didn't stop there. I was still curious, so I asked, so Casey, what do you feel the real challenge was here? And this is where the magic happened and the real truth surfaced. She actually said she didn't agree with the presentation, but she felt like it was too late to change it. You and Danny had put so much time into it, and I just didn't want to send us back to the drawing board. There it was. The real issue wasn't the room set up, and it actually wasn't the slides. It was trust. Casey didn't feel like there was space to be able to speak up. So you see, if I would have stayed at question 1, we would have just rearranged the dang furniture. But question 3 revealed something far more important. We need to build depth in our relationship. Casey and I needed to build more trust and psychological safety and the permission to challenge each other. So you see, those questions at that level of curiosity actually impacted and changed how I was leading with Casey. So why do we struggle so much with this as leaders? Well, let's connect back to the 3 energy traps that I talked about earlier. First, when you create overdependence, you're just simply not asking enough questions because you're always talking and telling. And when you're overwhelmed, you just rush past any deep questions altogether. And when you're disconnected to your purpose as a leader, honestly, you're just stopping caring enough to ask. But curiosity can break you free from all 3 of those traps. Curiosity takes ownership from us of having to have all the answers and helps transfer it to the other person, to your employee, to your team member, to your colleague. In fact, if you can get your employee to surface their own solutions and answers that are about 85% as good as yours, that's a win. Curiosity also slows overwhelm and reconnects you back to your purpose. But here's the key. Asking questions is not enough. You have to release your attachment to the outcome, because if you're asking questions and you secretly hope they say what you want them to say, that's actually not curiosity. It's manipulation disguised as inquiry. So listening without attachment, it creates this magic space for truth to be revealed. So here's your challenge. In your next one-on-one, resist the urge to give advice. Instead, ask your one initial question and then ask, and what else? And then after you've given space, ask, so what's the real challenge for you here? Then be quiet. Notice their tone, any pauses. Notice what feels like it's being avoided. And then once you've given the space for them to completely share, reflect back what you heard in words like, well, it sounds like, or what I'm hearing is. What we don't want to do is we don't want to fix. We don't want to jump in and rescue, and you don't want to insert yourself too quickly. Let them think, because better thinking produces better ownership, and ownership produces empowered teams. So let's go ahead and bring this home. Staying curious and asking better questions leads to better thinking. Better thinking leads to better ownership, and better ownership leads to greater impact. But asking questions isn't enough. You must let go of your agenda and truly listen. Not listening to respond, you're listening to understand. When you stay in the conversation long enough to reach question 3 or further, you uncover the truth that was already in the room. Because what I know for certain is that in every work group, there's greatness and untapped potential around you right now, in your team, in your organization, and in the conversations that you've been rushing through. The right question at the right time, paired with listening without attachment, is going to unlock it. And guess what? You don't have to have all the answers. You have to create the space where the best answers can emerge. So this week, I challenge you to pause longer, ask deeper, stay curious, and trust that when you listen without attachment, you will not only amplify just your leadership, but the lives of the people you lead. That is the unspoken advantage of the top 1%, and it's available to you. So if this episode resonated with you, make sure to grab the leader guide linked in the show notes, where we outline the 7 powerful questions that you can begin using immediately. Thank you for being committed to learning and growth and stepping into a new way to work, a new way to team, and a new way to lead. And as always, thank you for choosing to be the one.